So by now, I'm sure you guys have all seen the new footage for the video game currently in development titled UNRECORD. And the reason everyone is talking about this game is because of the hyper-realistic graphics on display with Unreal Engine 5. I've seen several bigger YouTubers cover it already, but I have a slightly different angle that I want to approach it from. For starters, the reason why this game is in the public consciousness right now is because it looks so good that it has reinvigorated concerns about the connection between simulated violence and real-life violence. And like Moist Critical said in his video, games have been part of our culture for long enough that the people drawing these criticisms are not out-of-touch boomers anymore, but people who also grew up playing video games as well. That being said, is there actually something to this new wave of concerns surrounding these hyper-realistic video games? Are children in particular more at risk for committing violent acts the closer we get to photorealism in video games? In my opinion, I don't think so, and I hope to explain why in this video. Hello fellow travelers, and welcome to the Hard Light Network. So to get things started, this game looks phenomenal, and from a technical standpoint, the developer has really outdone himself. And to be quite honest with you, I'm really worried about people's concerns detracting from that. And from what we know so far, there's actually plans to have an interactive narrative where the player makes moral decisions. Giving players the agency of whether or not they're going to behave in a moral or immoral way is a big part of my argument. I'll come back to that in a minute. But gameplay and story elements aside, it's the visual depiction of the violence itself as well as the level of realism that has most people bothered. And in my opinion, I think those concerns might be a little unfounded. Just to get my biases out of the way real quick, I've been a gamer my entire life, and I've played violent video games pretty much the entire time, ever since I was a young kid. Fighting games like Tekken, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, war games like Call of Duty and Medal of Honor, even games like Onimusha and God of War were commonplace in my house. The first game I ever played as a kid was Resident Evil on the PlayStation, and from my experience, the most realistic games were hardly the most graphic or violent. Watching Kratos rip the head off a Gorgon to use as a weapon was definitely more graphic and violent than carjacking someone in San Andreas. When you consider games that strive for realism, games like Arma 2, for instance, even though they include mechanics like locational damage and blood loss, the violence depicted on screen falls short of even some Hollywood movies. There's also the issue of how our brains physically interact with digital media. Some studies have shown that brain activity while watching a movie is similar to brain activity while dreaming. And if that's the case, are there similar risks to seeing violence in dreams as there are to seeing violence depicted in movies or even video games? Again, I don't think so, and it's mainly because the violence that we see depicted in movies or television or in video games is fundamentally different than the violence that we encounter in real life situations. And if you've been on the dark side of Twitter, then you know what I'm saying is true. There is a quality of realism present in CCTV footage that is just completely lacking in any sort of digital entertainment media. And it honestly has nothing to do with the quality of the video. What's funny is, video games and movies actually fall on opposite ends of the spectrum from how we perceive them compared to real life violence. The big difference is obviously interactivity. When it comes to movies or TV, you kind of just have to sit there and let it happen to you. You can engage intellectually, but you can't do anything to alter the narrative from your end. Whereas video games are specifically built around player interaction. Therein lies the problem for many people. It's this interactive quality to games that gives people pause when it comes to depicting violence in video games. But I don't think that's as strong of an argument as it sounds at first. And this second development video released by the UNRECORD team is actually a perfect example. In order to prove that the game wasn't pre-rendered and that the player had full control over the camera, the developers show a clip of the player character firing off the gun randomly. They also fly around the level with the camera and render in and out of the map. And the reason why this is a perfect example is because this clip shatters any illusion of realism. Now imagine this. You're dropped into the game on launch day, you're playing, you're enjoying how good the game looks, and then all of a sudden, the frame rate drops. You glitch through a wall, but then your character rubber bands back to the starting location. When things finally settle down, you walk into the first room, kill your first enemy, but you killed him before he was able to finish his audio clip, and the audio clip keeps playing while he's lying dead on the ground. A developer's launch day nightmare is probably one of their biggest safety nets against these kind of arguments. UNRECORD in particular actually uses a clever trick blurring the faces of the NPC character models because the creatures lurking in the dark depths of the uncanny valley are more disturbing than any amount of simulated video game violence. All jokes aside though, reality doesn't break when you're in the middle of a violent altercation, and you can't pause a street fight to go get more popcorn. And these facts should help alleviate people's concerns. Depictions of violence in art, whether it's in movies or games, allow us to explore and to express those feelings without the consequences of someone actually being hurt. And in my opinion, we shouldn't restrict everyone's access to these things because some people might misuse or misunderstand the purpose of them. There are already rules in place to protect children, and I know that they aren't always followed. I know that parents aren't always vigilant about the type of media that their kids consume, and I know that kids can always lie online about their age in order to buy content directly from the developers. Honestly, I think the ESRB rating system we have is perfectly fine. It's a quick and concise way to know about what sort of content is in the game and about what age range it's okay to play it. With that being said, the real question is, should regular people be punished because of an unproven risk? Personally, I don't think it's likely that we'll ever see games that are so realistic that it causes the average person to forget that it's a game. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like, and until next time, love you guys, safe travels.